Good morning to everyone. I'm happy to see you today. Hope you have a good morning and probably better day with some knowledge that you will get right now. Probably you remember that we were talking about the institutions of European Union. We were discussing Commission of European Union and its legal status. We indicated the main functions, tasks, rights and obligations, the composition of Commission, and that's my point of view that we have to start from the Commission talking about the institutions, because Commission actually represents the interests of European Union. That's why I always wanted to start with this one. And today we're talking on the other side of the powerful power in European Union, about the Council of Ministers, Council of European Union. That's usually we start, some of the scientists starts to discuss institutions from this one institution. So let's have a look on the presentation that we have. So the plan for today will be a little bit history of the Council of the European Union, the idea that is behind these institutions, some of the functions according to the Treaty of European Union and Treaty on Functioning of the European Union, the preparation work for this great institution. We'll talk about COREPER. I will explain this for you later, the voting process and the presidency in Council of the European Union. So why? What was the idea? What was the necessity of creating this institution? So in European Community on Coal and Steel, the role of the Council was coordination between some high authorities and member states. So first of all, we are talking about coordination, communication. We are not talking about any power that these institutes really had. However, this institute had the power from the very moment of beginning. But it's not. It was not the main idea to give the power to this council. The main idea was to create a supranational body and to give to this body the power to control, to monitor the situation in the 6 member states. And the idea that member states as well will have this power was not popular. So the first main task of the council was to communicate, to coordinate the policies of the governments between these member states. In European Economic Community, the council received a significant power. So in 1957, based on Rome Treaty, the council from that moment started to be the authority who represents the policies of the government, who represents the ideological aspects of national parliaments, national governments. In 1992, since the Maastricht Treaty, the European Council started to be the main legislative body in European Union. We always connect the legislation with the Parliament of European Union because we connect the term Parliament with legislation. However, the European Union has a unique system, and the Parliament didn't have all this periods, this independent legislative power. Only since 2009, Parliament became the part of the legislative process independently. About the Council, in 1992, since the creation of European Union, all the decisions went special path from absolute majority to qualified voting. So when we're talking about 80s, 70s, 60s, so we remember that there are, first of all, 6 members of European community. Then in 1986, we have 12 members of European community. And the decisions were comparatively easy to take, because they need only 12, 6, 9 votes, 9 countries, 9 views, 9 opinions that, for example, we have to mix and to give some balanced common view from them. But when since 1992 we're talking about big quantity of member states. In 2001, according to the Nice Treaty, European Union were preparing for the greatest enlargement of European Union. So 24 governments and 24 views on policies have to be some way coordinated. So it was impossible to take all the decisions with absolute majority. And from that moment, more and more questions, more and more aspects become the question of majority, qualified majority voting process. So this a little three historical points, 51, 57, 92, gave us the reflection of the development of European Union, from communication coordination to significant power, and then understanding that this significant power is responsible for a lot of questions, and this significant power has to work effectively, dynamically. So the decisions have to be taken faster, and we are thinking about this institution as rather flexible one. So in 2009, we have Lisbon Treaty on European Union and Treaty on Functioning of the European Union, which gave more autonomy to the Parliament of European Union, and put some created for us a triangle of provisions between Commission, Parliament, and Council. So they work closely of the everyday life of European Union. Since 2009, Council cooperates with Parliament in legislative procedure, and it's hard to imagine that the Council will work autonomously without the opinion of Parliament, without the proposition of Commission, without some annual reports. So we started with the main thinking that Council, who represents the governments, is a balance to Commission, who represents the European Union, but we finish the history with the idea that we need to find the balance not only between the interests of the European Union and the national governments, but also with the citizens who are represented in parliament. The next slide, that the first name of the Council of Ministers was Special Council of Ministers, and they were really discussing the problems of the creation established community, and balance the supranational character of the high authority to ensure the say of smaller countries on matter not directly related to coal and steel, and to prevent them from being overwhelmed by larger states. The first 6 members, Germany, France, Italy, who are supposed to be big countries who had big interest in some of the industries, and the other 3 who are Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, whose interests were secure by creating this high authority. They were secured because every country, every member state has this vote, and no decision could be taken without the total agreement of the country on this decision. And qualified majority voting system was issued by the 6 member states, ensuring the balance of power between large and small states. So, first of all, the idea that is hidden behind this institutional system is that the European Council is opposition to the supranational nature of the European Commission. So European Commission has this direct force of its legislative acts, of other documents, has the supranational power of legal provisions. However, it's impossible to imagine that European Commission will rule in domestic affairs in some spheres of the member states. So in order to shape this coordination, in order to shape this idea, we have from the one side European Commission, and from the other side the European Council. So going to the Article 15 of the Treaty on European Union, the European Council shall provide the Union with the necessary impetus for its development, and shall define the general political directions and priorities thereof. It shall not exercise legislative functions. So how difficult to imagine that some of the member states will provide the perspective, will coordinate their actions in order to have the plan of the perspective of the European Union, and will not and will cooperate with the European Commission, and will the interests of the European Union very, very closely. I wouldn't say that the member states are so flexible that they put the interest of European Union behind on the first place. But it is important to say that the interest of European Union as the main aim of the Treaty on European Union took the place into the people's mind, into consciousness, and become the part of legal culture. So the idea that we have now an authority, an institution that is in opposition to the Commission, they're really not fighting with each other. They're cooperating. They have to deal with the common view that has the European Union. So the European, according to the Article 15, the European Council shall consist of the heads of states and or governments or the member states, and they cooperate. They meet and define some of the key aspects of the existence of the European Union. The European Council shall meet twice every 6 months, convened by its president, so according to the Article 15. And when the agenda so requires, the members of the European Council may decide, each to be assisted by a minister, and in case of the president of the Commission, by a member of the Commission. When the situation so requires, the president shall convene a special meeting of the European Council. So there is an understanding that there won't be a strict, defined configuration of the council. There are different representatives of the country according to the questions that are discussed will be invited, and the member states sometimes are represented by 2 persons, maybe 3. It's an exemption, however it's possible, and they are meeting with, as well as with the president of the Commission, and sometimes even with the high representatives on the foreign policy, because it's hard to imagine that the discussed issues won't be connected with some of the aspects of their policies. So this term that I used on one of the slides, the opposition, is really not what it seems like to be, because this opposition means that there is a possibility that there probably will be another interest of the member states, probably other thinking of solution of the problems. However, they has to create common understanding of some of the tasks they have, some of the functions they fulfill. So opposition is probably the term which we have to understand in a matter of creating a balance, that no institution such as European Commission will create some overwhelmed power, and no member states will be able to stop it or to indicate the problem. So, except where the treaties provide otherwise, decisions of the European Council shall be taken by consensus once again. And the president of the European Council is elected by qualified majority for a term of 2.5 years, and this term is renewable once, so it's possible for the president to be on the place for 5 years. And this president has some obligations according to the Article 15. This president shall chair the meetings and drive forward the work of this institute, the President shall ensure the preparation and continuity of the work of the European Council in cooperation with the President of the Commission on the basis of the work of General Affairs Council. And of course, the President of the European Council shall endeavor to facilitate cohesion and consensus within the European Council. This person is also shall ensure the external representation of the Union on issues concerning its common foreign and security policy without prejudice to the powers of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. So we already discussed the legal status of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, defined its role in creating this aspect of the policy of European Union. So the President of the European Council should not influence or create some additional power for him just to represent the European Union, because actually this is the role of High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. So we now have five main functions of the Council of the European Union, and we will talk about them right away. So negotiation and adoption the European Union laws, coordination member states' policies, development the European Common Foreign and Security Policy, conclusion international agreements, and adoption the European Union budget. As a rule, the European Union budget, as probably in majority of the countries, this is actually a law, and it goes through the legislative procedure. However, because of its high importance role, we put the function of adoption of the European Union budget to another function and put it separately. So according to Article 16 Treaty on European Union, the Council shall jointly with the European Parliament exercise legislative and budgetary functions. It shall carry out policy making and coordinating functions as laid down in the treaties. We will continue that according to item 2 of the Article 16, the Council shall consist of a representative of each member state at ministerial level, who may commit the government of the member states in question and cast its vote. So for today we have 28 member states of European Union. So 28 representatives may be in council who create this common opinion, this representation of their national government's view. The Council shall act by qualified majority, except where the treaties provide otherwise. Please stress your attention to this item 3, the term qualified majority. So 28 countries, it is very difficult for them to create one single common opinion on each topic. Because the countries are different and they are on different levels of their development and economic development, and perhaps the perspectives they see for their countries. So in order to make European Union flexible for adopting laws and for taking decisions, they may take decision by qualified majority. Not a single majority, So 15 countries will be enough for example, changing some of the main ideas of European Union. It's not enough. 15 countries. We need qualified majority that will be 18 countries of the European Union that have to vote for or against some of the propositions they have. From the 1st of November 2014, qualified majority shall be defined as at least 55 of the members of the Council, comprising at least 15 of them and representing member states comprising at least 65% of the population of the Union. So the decision-making process and the representation of the interests of the national governments should be connected with them, not only with the countries, but also with the people who live in these countries. So there are possibilities, hypothetical possibilities that some countries with small population may have a common view on solution on some of the problems, and it's impossible for them to create this majority without having the 65% of the population of the union. So this term qualified majority and the decision-making process in European Union takes a lot of time, and please once again remember that European Union came from the total agreement, absolute majority to qualified majority, and it took a lot time, like from 1957 to the 2014 to gain this goal. Blocking minority. Hope you remember this from constitutional law, from commercial law, that sometimes it's impossible to take some decisions without the opinion of some of the members of the group. So blocking minority is also possible in European Union, and it's specially indicated in the Article 16. And the other arrangements governing the qualified majority are laid down in Article 2238 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. So there are exceptions to this rule. They are specially defined in the Article 238. We will come to it during the lecture. So about the voting process, depending on the issue under discussion, the Council of European Union takes its decision by simple majority. Usually these questions are not about the policies, some of the legislative issues or agreements international agreements that the European Union will conclude. This simple majority is used for some technical decisions, for some issues of organization of work of the Council of European Union. On the other hand, as we were talking about qualified majority, that needs 55% of member states representing at least 65% of the European Union population. And unanimous vote, all votes are in favor. European Union still has this procedure only to specified exceptional aspects such as new members or exit of some of the members, or concluding some of the international agreements that may change uh, the opinion of European Union on some issues such as human rights, for example, the international agreement with Council of Europe, which is supposedly we will have soon. The Council can vote only if a majority of its members is present. A member of the Council may only act on the behalf of one other member. So there is a strong rule that for meeting of Council of European Union become powerful, they need at least 15 of members present, and the members may only has the power to represent two countries at maximum. So, for example, there is a possibility that the Minister of Belgium or Netherlands will represent the national government of the neighbor country and only one neighbor country. So it's impossible to imagine that, for example, Prime Minister of Poland or Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland will represent Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, and other countries of this region, for example. Like for Scandinavian region or Baltic region. So we have to understand that even this limit is an exceptional one for European Union institutions. The Council can vote on a legislative act 8 weeks after the draft act has been sent to national parliament for their examination. The national parliaments have to decide whether the draft legislation complies with the principle of subsidiarity, and earlier voting is only possible in special urgent cases. While we were talking on Commission of European Union, we defined that only this institution has a strong connection of to propose legislative acts, and this proposition is possible only after the examination of this bill on the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality. And Council won't work with any proposition, any legislative bill, if it wasn't brought to the attention of the national parliament. So they have to have their opinion on this proposition, and so we imagine this picture that Commission started preparational work and started to create a bill, then usually informs about it the national parliaments and waits for their opinion on this proposition. And only after getting their expert view on whether this law bill fits to the power of European Union, whether it compromises with the principle of proportionality and subsidiarity, then the Council probably will vote on starting the legislating procedure. So they're still not in the process of actually legislative work. They are just deciding whether they start to work on it. And once again, reminding for you that there is a special protocol, which is the part of the Treaty of European Union on using the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality, which is very important for these issues. So in Article 16, we have a special rule about that the Council shall meet in different configurations, the list of which may be adopted in accordance with the Article 236 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. So different configurations means that there are some issues that will be discussed and voted by different representatives of the member states. So if we are discussing some agricultural questions, probably we need the Minister of Agriculture. If we discuss the problems of Eurozone, trade policies, or customs union, then probably we need not to delegate the Minister of Agriculture to this meeting, but the Minister of Infrastructure or Economical Development, or as something like that. As ministers in every member states, they have their own titles. So different configurations work as a Council of European Union. They are not working at the same time. So there is a meeting for ministers of connection and transport, for example, and there won't be at the same moment the meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs. There will be just one meeting with adoption some of the bills, examines some of the problems, and declaring the views of the countries. After that, they will set the time for another meeting for other representatives of the countries, of the member states. So in this way, the European Union once again shows the flexibility, the idea that different branch spheres, different areas of policy are represented by specialists and by the persons who are in charge for this policy. For us, it is difficult to imagine that the Minister of Foreign Affairs will be as well informed in agricultural sphere as the Minister of Agriculture. Of course, it's possible for this person to be prepared for the meeting, but there is a discussion. There are some ideas that may arise during these discussions. So probably you understand that it's more convenient, it's more useful to organize this special meeting of these ministers of agriculture. So different configurations, usually we are talking about 10 configurations, and they may be just day after day organize some meetings. However, they are planning these meetings, so it's not a surprise for the representative of the country that for today's meeting there is a necessity in the Minister of Economy, and for tomorrow's meetings it's the necessity the representative of the Minister of Education, for example. The General Affairs Council shall ensure consistency in the work of the different council configuration, and it shall prepare and ensure the follow-up to meetings of the European Council in liaison with the President of the European Council and the Commission. So the General Affairs Council seems to everybody as the main configuration. However, there is no such strict rule or provision. The Foreign Affairs Council shall elaborate the Union external action on the basis of strategic guidelines laid down by the European Council and ensure that the Union's action is consistent. And you remember about, once again, the High Representative of Foreign Affairs, and that declares, represents the external policy of the European Union. So once again, Council's configurations in 10 different meetings, depending on the subject being discussed. There is no hierarchy among the Council's configurations, although a lot of scientists, lawyers define that the General Affairs Council has a special role in coordination of the institutional work. Okay, so how it's possible for them, for the representatives of the member states, the ministers, prepare their work, organize their work, and be effective. First of all, there is a committee of permanent representatives of the governments of the member states, which in short we call COREPER. It's from French term, so as I don't know French so well, I won't say the French original term. So this committee of permanent representatives is responsible for preparing the work of the Council. We have a special provision for that. So this body, auxiliary body of the Council, for which it carries out preparation and implementation work. COREPER's function of carrying out the tasks assigned to it by the Council does not give it the power to take decisions which belongs under the treaty to the Council. So preparational work for meetings, of the ministers. 28 countries, and it's difficult to imagine that there are some specialists on one level that have enough knowledges, power, and information on preparing the agenda of the Council of Ministers. So there are two levels of COREPER. We have the COREPER 1 and COREPER 2. COREPER 1 consists of ambassadors, and COREPER 2 consists of national deputies of the member states. And probably you understand that COREPER 2 is more powerful and the highest authority comparing with the COREPER 1. COREPER 1 actually is the starting point of discussing the issues that will be put on agenda for discussing during the Council of Ministers. Ambassadors, they are located in Brussels and starting to work with timing up all the questions that have to be probably brought up for discussing. After that, the COREPER 2, which consists of deputies, national deputies, starting to finalize this agenda in order it to be appropriate and necessary right away for this moment. According to Article 240, Treaty on Functioning of European Union, a committee consisting of the permanent representatives of the governments of the member states shall be responsible for preparing the work of the Council and for carrying out the tasks assigned to it by the letter. The committee may adopt procedural decisions in cases provided for in the Council's rules of procedure. But just the previous slide, we know that the COREPER, this Committee of Permanent Representatives, actually doesn't have the power to adopt any laws. They have a proposition, they may cooperate and coordinate. They present the idea, but they are not able to limit the topics for discussion. They are not able to short the agenda. They present all their thinking to the Coreper 2, the national deputies, who probably will generalize the information and put it on the table of the President of the Council of Ministers. Prior to a council meeting, all items of the agenda are examined by Coreper, unless otherwise decided by the council or Coreper itself. And these items has to be very carefully examined by the representatives, national deputies, and by the council who will work with these issues during the meeting. Coreper 1 prepares the work of 6 council configuration: agriculture and fisheries, competitiveness, education, youth, culture and sport, employment, social policy, health and consumer affairs, environmental issues, transport, telecommunications, and energy. So there is also a division between Coreper 1 and Coreper 2 on what kind of topic they are preparing for the council meeting. And Coreper 2 is responsible for economic issues, foreign affairs, general affairs, justice, and home affairs. So there is not only division between Coreper 1 and Coreper 2 on the level of the persons who represent their country, but also the topics that they are working with. Article 16 about the meeting of the council puts the rule that all these meetings should be public, and all the legislative work should be public and well known for the citizens of European Union, especially when there is a voting process on a draft legislative act. So there is no possibility for any representative of the country to put their voice against or for a legislative act without this fact being known by other persons. To this end, each council meeting shall be divided into 2 parts, dealing respectively with deliberations on union legislative acts and non-legislative activities. From one of the slides, you remember that there are such functions as negotiations, cooperation, concluding international treaties that Union is responsible for, and Council divides its meetings into sphere of legislative work and other non-legislative activities. The presidency of council configurations other than the foreign affairs shall be held by a member state represent on the basis of equal rotation. And once again, these rules show us that how this configuration were carefully created, established, and how European Union with respect accept the representation of the countries of their authority to the European Union, to the European Union institutions. So, according to Article 236 of the treaty, the European Council shall adopt by a qualified majority the decision establishing the list of council's configurations other than those of the General Affairs Council and of the Foreign Affairs Council, and also the decision on the presidency of council configuration other than that of foreign affairs in accordance with the Article 18. So there is a strict rule about the issues that have to be voted by qualified majority. You remember that needs 55% of countries, of member states, and at least 65% that represents 65% of population of European Union. So there is a special term for this meetings, concilium. Usually when you are looking for meetings of Council of Ministers, you may put concilium U, and you will find probably what you are looking for. So to sum up, we now understand that Council of Ministers meets in different formations, one representative from each member state at ministerial level. However, we know the exception that there is possibility that the one representative may have two votes from its national country and from other one. And these formations take legislative proposition by the Commission, which came from, they have to be examined by the Commission and national parliaments and discuss them. They are process of creation with a very strong expertise of these propositions, because when they actually support the legislative initiative of Commission, there is a strong possibility that this legal act will be adopted, and it will influence like 28 countries and a lot of neighbors of European Union and their partners. So this action should be examined on different levels, starting from ambassadors, national deputies, coming to the ministerial level at this moment, and then the process of discussion in Parliament of European Union. So what about the I will just remind you about the legislation that the Council of Ministers is responsible for adopt. They adopt regulations, the most powerful legal acts which are directly applicable and have binding force, and their binding legal force spreads on all entities, all natural persons and member states. These regulations have immediate effect on a specific date that are put in this act, and usually they are designed to adjust the existing law. So the Council of Ministers may adopt some regulations with this strict rule. The majority of legal acts will be directives as well. They're working with them. They also have binding legal force, and directives define the goal that the member states should achieve, and the terms or the tools of achievement of this goal are the obligation of the member states to define, and member states have usually a long term to achieve these goals, and they usually inform the commission the way of the goals will be achieved and the time that are supposed to be the start of legal force of this directive. Apart from that, Council of Ministers also adopt decisions which has binding force in specific areas, and they are usually aimed to put a special legal provision or put a special regulation for defined sphere or specific aspect of the sphere, and we may say, to sum up, that it more closely to some administrative issues for Council of Ministers. And there are acts that European Union also adopts as recommendation and opinions. I hope you remember we were talking about them. So the Council of Ministers adopts also recommendations and opinions, and they do not have binding force, and they used to present the opinion of European Union on some aspects, on some, for example, new policy or up-to-date agenda, some political issues perhaps, maybe they even have some interpretation or legal experts opinion on how European Union accepts or understands some legal institutes. I should also stress your attention that sometimes these recommendations and opinions become the legal acts. So the opinion of European Union, the interpretation from this document in some years, in 5 years, maybe then appear in legal act, which has a binding force. So usually these recommendations and opinions are just the first step of the creation of the law bill in European Union. So we sum up the levels of decision making in the Council of Ministers, and we remember that first the governments has some issues they would like to discuss in on the basis of European Union level. Then they present their opinion via Coreper 1, via ambassadors, in order to start to create the agenda of meeting. After the ambassadors in Coreper 1 discuss these ideas, these propositions, they started to create the agenda for Coreper 2, national deputies. And after it, all these propositions come to the head of the Council of Ministers, and they are cooperating on creating this common view on the agenda for discussing the ministers. So we are not talking about the creation of law bills. Actually, we are talking about the starting point of this law bill, whether there is a necessity of this legal provision on the level of European Union. And the other important issue of Council of Ministers is decision-making process, which is possible by qualified majority, simple majority, and unanimously. Once again, 55% of countries, of member states that are representing 65% of population of European Union. What about the President of the Council of the European Union? He or she is responsible for the functioning of the Council of the European Union, and for you not to be mistaken, not to be misled. Sometimes this person is incorrectly referred to as President of the European Union. The President of the European Union, the President of the European Council is the person presiding over and driving forward the work of the European Council. The other person is the person who takes the position of the President of the European Union. So there is this terminological hide and seek, just like with Council of Europe, European Council, and Council of the European Union. So, what will be the questions? Probably you have some of them. Was everything understandable?
No, I have one question, but first of all, I want to thank you for such an interesting and really lecture. And I want to ask you a question. So, can you tell me, please, how the coordination of member state policies realizes?
So they have this ministerial level, ministers, and sometimes it can be persons who are the members of the cabinet of ministers, but they don't have actually a minister. They have some additional executive body, and they have some issues they are dealing every day, or they would like to make the cooperation between countries better, because actually they don't have actual borders for some transport issues or stuff like that. And they started to discuss it, first of all, on national level, and then present it to the ambassadors, national deputies. And in a way, during this discussion, during this these levels, they create an area of thinking, a single view on these issues. So it's an interesting way of coordination when discussing on different levels brings us once again to the nature of European Union. So from the local, regional, national to the highest authorities. And once again shows that European Union, it's possible, won't work with these issues, because it will send back those issues, because it's not the power of the European Union, or not the level which will better resolve the question. So this coordination in discussion on different levels, as probably I'm trying to explain to you. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you for explanation. Now it's clear.
I also have the question. Can you tell maybe the one main function for the European Council?
I would say to present the national view, the national view on the existence of the European Union and coexistence with the problems. So they are presenting their national interests. They won't, first of all, start from the balance of the interests or the interest of the European Union. their function, their task is to present their view, their national view. And this idea that one institution presents the view of Commission, the view of European Union, and the other institution presents the view of national governments. And they have to step by step on different level to put this thinking together, to create a common view in this way.
Okay,
So,
thanks for the answer.
thank you too. How was the lecture? Was the slides understandable?
Sure.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your attention. I will, of course, send the presentation and give some additional links to the Council of Ministers for you to read the actual today's information about who represents, which are the topics for today's, for example, meetings, and what is the perspective work for them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.